Hello, welcome to our video chat for February 2024 of Donkeys and Dragons. We'll spend about 15 minutes chatting about a specific topic. So today, we've been inspired to explore something that has puzzled us for a little while. I'm Janet Gregory.
And I'm Lisa Crispin. Yes, we often have noticed that somebody will post an idea or a concept that actually has been an established practice for 20 or more years. For example, we'll see a post by someone who seems to have newly discovered the idea that the whole team should be responsible for quality and engage in testing activities together. We first learned this principle back in around 2000 with extreme programming, and we and others have promoted it ever since. So, how could people not already know about it? What do you think, Janet?
Well, I think you brought up an important point. Um, we see these questions keep coming up. Sometimes I get a question, for example, how do I do this? But there's no one right way. How do you answer it, right? There's lots of blog posts out there, as you mentioned. They show how they solve something, which is good. I like that. I really do. But as you also mentioned, they might have been able to avoid some of the mistakes if they had, I don't know, maybe a list of books or articles or people to follow. There's more and more books out there all the time. Sometimes it's hard to differentiate, and it's not simple, I know that, to differentiate between the good books and the not so good books. So people are, they get confused. So what do you think? How might people discover some of these maybe leading practices, as we want to call them?
Yeah, Janet, what you say about books applies to, people's YouTube channels or their blogs and conference presentations, anything. So how do you know?
Mhm.
Who do you trust? I don't
Good
know what gets
question.
taught at universities these days, but I suspect not a lot about agile or holistic testing. Probably not even much about agile practices from what I hear.
Mhm.
Um, and there are a lot of leaders in the quality area that I didn't have firsthand knowledge of, like Dr. Deming, Jerry Weinberg. I learned about their teachings through other people. And I didn't have enough curiosity to go out and read their books themselves, although I'm trying to catch up. But the fact is, people I respected or worked with or met that I trusted, and they're like, oh, here are these ideas from these people. And oh, good, let me learn about them. But the truth is that new people come into our industry every day. It's a fast growing area, and they don't know what they don't know. It would really be helpful if part of every person's onboarding when they join a new team, especially if they're new to the profession, that they get like a reading list or a list of resources and videos or courses where they could learn about the established principles
Right.
and practices from their own coworkers. Obviously conferences and training courses could help too. So we hope that
Yeah.
companies would send their people to conferences to learn more or get them training courses. Again, you have to know which ones are really helpful and good. And also, we know not everything works in every context, right? So we don't like the term best practices. We say leading practices. But to know what other software teams around the world have run into, how they navigated difficulties that are common to all software teams, that's really helpful. And so these things could give them an idea. I really like, and I know you do too, principles and values like the agile principles and the agile values because and we have our testing principles for agile testers, um, the agile manifesto principles.
Mhm.
I like those the most because they provide guidance to help you navigate your work, but they're not strict rules. So, Janet, what are some other issues that you've seen that's related to this?
Yeah, there's actually a few, but you just triggered a thought because I think it was yesterday. Um, Somebody had posted something about principles, and I think it was in response to your LinkedIn.
Mm,
thing yesterday on principles and values, and somebody said, "Yes, but these don't tell us how to test."
mm.
And I think I responded and I kind of said, well, principles and values guide. They don't tell you how. And I think that's been one of the biggest criticisms of our books is they don't tell you how to test. They give you lots of different stories and things people have shared and what we found, but they don't say this is how you do it, right? And some of the other issues around that is misinterpretation of a
Mhm.
practice. I see it so often, and it's kind of a scary thing. Um, in fact, I read a lot of blog posts, and I've seen somebody promote a practice which I actually think of as unhealthy. Doesn't mean that I'm right. I just think of it as unhealthy. For example, I read something a while ago where somebody proposed a testing iteration or sprint.
Mhm.
Um, after, right? So you code one sprint and then test after. And I thought, oh, I haven't seen that for a lot of years. Please don't do that. Um, and in this day and age of social media, we can't control what people say or what people read. I try not to promote unhealthy practices. I just kind of let them be. Um, but I think this might, really contribute to some of the confusion that people have. Um, it seems like such a long time ago we started writing about quality practices in Agile. And now there's so much information out there, almost information overload, right? Um, in my first Agile team, I couldn't find anything about testing in Agile until, I contacted Brian Merrick, who sent me to you, right?
Yeah, that takes us way back, right? About almost 25 years. Um, and you, both of us read, there was a whole suite of extreme programming books from Addison Wesley that we both read back then. And they were all about quality and testing, but nothing about testers or really how does this testing get done. Very focused on functional testing and not other quality attributes and things
Mhm.
like that. And you know, Tip House and I wrote our first extreme programming book. In response to that, it's like we're learning a lot ourselves and from people like you at the time. And how do we share that? And you tested the book for us. You were a huge part of that as well. So we gathered, here are the problems that we found. These are common to other teams. Here's how we solved them. And we know there are going to be a lot more problems, but you can try this and probably it'll work for you. So move on to the next obstacle. And I was so frustrated when I went to a 2-day workshop of testing leaders in 2003, and none of them had read our book, which is the only book on testing
Yeah.
and extreme programming, but they all wanted to join on the Agile bandwagon. And I was so frustrated because all the discussions were about things that we went over in our book. And his is how we
Mhm.
solved it. We think this will work for most teams. Give it a try. And they had no knowledge of these practices or techniques. So they were spending time discussing problems that were basically solved by our book instead of I knew it's like I want to bring up these other problems that aren't
Yeah.
solved yet. So social media, as you point out, it's been kind of a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
Um, it can spread ideas more easily, but it can spread misinformation more easily and start, a lot of ugly conversations as well. And it's a fire hose of information.
Yeah.
So,
I was thinking as you were talking here, I wonder, like I want to encourage people to share their experiences because I think that's great.
mhm,
But if people share their experiences and then referenced maybe where they got the idea from,
yeah,
rather than presenting it as this is brand new, right? Because I'm sure most people have read something, somebody's blog post someplace, and just said, I read this idea, but here's how I adapted it for my team,
mhm,
rather than making it seem like it's a brand new idea when it's been out there for 20, 25 years, because I'm sure that that's doing themselves a favor, actually. But, you know, let's let's promote other people, because there's so many people out there with some great ideas. We've promoted them ourselves, like the test with Canvas, and Merrick's quadrants, right?
Mhm.
Promote others, adapt them. Please do adapt those questions, but just kind of say, hey, I read this and this is how I adapted. Maybe that's part of how we go forward.
I think that's a really good point. And you know, if you or your team are experiencing a problem or you want to know how to test something or how to do something, do some searching. We have search engines. See what's out there. Are there books? Are there people? You could even ask on, LinkedIn or
Yeah.
any of Slack communities you're on, and see what other people have found. It's
Mhm.
probably going to save you a lot of time for starters. And we love seeing people try something that we suggested because it worked for us, and then adapt it and say, well,
Yes.
it didn't work like this, but here's what we did instead, or here's how we changed
Mhm.
it. That's how we grow, because we're always going to have new problems developing
Yes.
software,
There we are.
and building quality in. And so we do want to see that grow.
And we're always learning, right?
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
So I think we're kind of out of time here. So
Okay.
we hope that you folks who are listening to this will share some of your ideas with us. Do you see what we talked about today as a problem, or not? Do you have any suggestions to share? So leave your comments or maybe start a LinkedIn conversation with us. We'd love to hear it. So here's our contact information. We look forward to hearing from you, and please do subscribe to our newsletter, new content every month, and don't forget to check out our blog posts. So see you next time.
Great. Thanks. See y'all next time.